left channel, right channel, center.
ENVTuber 一問一答自己紹介
Yeah, and the tape's
それじゃあ
rolling.
行くよせーのお名前は
Katt Phloxworthy.
呼び方は
Just Cat is fine.
あなたは何系 VTuber?
Nerdy cat girl who features spaceflight.
誕生日は
May 4th.
年齢は
Older than Pneumatic.
性別は
Transgender
身
female.
長は
4'11".
出身は
Sacramento County.
チャームポイントは
Dialogue hair clip.
突然ですがモノマネどうぞ
Yeah, what's up, Dad?
活動場所は
Twitch, Twitter, YouTube.
はじめの挨拶
Thank you for joining me.
終わりの挨拶
Bye.
推しマークは
Not at present.
配信タグは
Catlight feed.
ファンアートは
Cat pics.
ファンネームは
Cat's apprentices.
好きな色は
Iris Indigo.
好きなことは
Vintage computers and
得
video.
意なことは
Technology.
ここで一言愛の告白好
I love you.
きな食べ物は
Ethnic foods.
好きな飲み物は
Craft soda.
好きな漫画は
Pizza 10.
好きなアニメは
Planet.
好きなゲームは
Left 4 Dead 2.
好きな音楽は
Classic rock.
苦手なことは
Human stupidity.
尊敬するのは
Space fairy people.
叶えたい夢は
ISS crew
最後にみん
interview.
なに一言どう
Thanks
ぞ
so much for your support and a final status check.
Go Atlas.
Go Centaur.
Go Katt Phlox.
You have permission to launch.
3, 2, 1. RD-180 ignition. Booster ignition and liftoff of Atlas V and Centaur. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me. Hi, Katt Phloxworthy here. We are about to head down to Launch Complex 39A over at the Kennedy Space Center, where a Falcon 9 with the Crew Dragon Endeavour sits on the pad. With right now, they've already had all three astronauts and the cosmonaut ingress into the vehicle, and I'm not certain if they've actually completed closeout. I believe they have. The arm is still in place. Before too long, what they're going to do is they're going to arm the launch escape system and start tanking operations, where they load both stages with the fuel RP1, or refined petroleum 1, which is a highly refined form of kerosene, along with the oxidizer, liquid oxygen. And after that, at about roughly at about just before the top of the hour, they will, if everything goes as I hope it does, they will lift off right around 58 minutes after this hour. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and pick up the coverage that's currently in progress. And as always, if you have any questions or want to talk a little bit about it, by all means, that's what this stream is for. So here we go.
Into lockdown at T-minus 45 minutes and remain in that state until launch escape system is disarmed. All operators are to remain in their console and maintain a sterile cockpit until MD confirms successful disarming the launch escape system following orbit insertion or propellant offload in the event of a scrub. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief the CE or LD and the approve board in the countdown. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch out sequence immediately and proceed in the launch abort sequence. At T-minus 10 seconds, launch control will be hands-off, relying on automated abort criteria for the remainder of the count. Operators advise the launch reactor whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. Launch control, you may proceed with arming the crew for movement.
So meanwhile, they're in the process. That was just a briefing to say, here's what's going to happen for the next, roughly 35 to 37, right around 40, just about 45 minutes.
We are moving forward toward launch. Propellant loading will begin in about 10 minutes, and crew access arm retraction has begun. So in the meantime, let's check back in with Megan and Raja.
So in the meantime, what they're getting ready to do is pull back the arm.
The countdown clock is continuing to tick, and we are now at T-minus 48 minutes and counting from launch. At the time of launch, the space station will be flying 260 statute miles over the southern Arabian Sea, southwest.
I have to take care of a quick
now, the crew
Discord DM on my RL account, so
will be tracked
stand by.
From Dragon. That is what we are looking for now, and actually it is happening right now. This is a critical milestone, right, Raja?
It is, and yeah, so the next big thing will be launching.
Dragon SpaceX for countdown timing.
Hey, Bryce, how you doing?
Go ahead.
Let's see what they have to say here.
All right, Matt, we're looking at one closeout photo of the side hatch, doing some analysis on it. and are going to be looking for you to be crisp with the launch escape system arming. Team is under a bit of pressure here to get a call in.
So they just pulled back the crew access arm, which is how they get in, go from the gantry on the side all the way up into Crew Dragon there.
The next big step is to arm the launch escape system. You heard the MD asking that they keep it crisp, just because they work some time constraints on the analysis from the side hatch photos. Yeah, a pretty key thing here, the launching the launch escape system. The crew will actually hear a number of valves, thunks and thuds, as the Super Dracos we talked about earlier, the valves that supply.
One of the things, like they said, they have to arm the launch escape system, so in case things go south while they're on the pad, or during the course of ascent, if in the case of a launch, or during propellant offload in the case of a scrub, they'll have the ability to escape at a moment's notice in case something goes really wrong. Just like what happened to Soyuz 11, where they had a fire on one of the stages, and if it had burned just a little bit longer before they ultimately fired the launch escape system on that case, it would be too late. They'd be still stuck to the top of the vehicle. It's one of the few times that the launch escape systems has ever been used to actually save a crew. And also during Soyuz MS-10 a couple years ago, when one of the four strap-ons failed to disconnect properly during the Korolev cross maneuver, where all four of the strap-on boosters that form the first stage around the core booster, which is considered the second stage, which is ignited at the same time, which is at the time the vehicle is launched. What they did, they cartweel outward, resembling a cross pattern, which is called a Korolev cross, named after the creator of the R7 Semyorka and all its derivatives, including Sputnik, Vostok, Voskhod, and Molnia, Sergei Korolev. Hey KF16, how you doing? I hope you're doing all right. And in the meantime, this is actually being simulcast on multiple networks. We're on YouTube, Twitch, and VStream.
At this time, you're go for viewing Section 6 of the procedure. You are not go for arming the command. How copy?
So they're not arming the launch escape system at present.
Can we preemptively close visors?
Yes, sir. Go for that.
They are closing their visors ahead of getting ready to do propellant load.
We talked about their steps and procedures. They said you can review but don't execute. So he's looking at the steps to arm the launch escape system, but what they've told him is to hold off until another few minutes here to actually get the call to do that. And you heard him talking about the photos they were looking at from the closeout of the hatch, and we talked about the analysis.
Yeah, there may be an issue with this. They could be scrubbing. We'll see what happens, because it does take about. When they start the prop load, that takes pretty much the entire time, all the way up until like about 2.5 minutes before T0.
Are all good before proceeding with launch.
And that's the reason why they're giving the no-go for enabling the LES.
Pause and think about that now, is because, like we've talked about, once you arm the launch escape system, then now you're sitting on a armed set of prop in that Dragon. The Super Dracos are active, and so right now the closeout crew is gone. No one's around there. So before you take that next step, you want to make sure that you have a clear path forward towards launch.
I'm not sure if that's a drone or a helicopter taking these photos. That is a beautiful shot.
Whether or not to go forward with arming the launch escape system, which obviously needs to happen before we can proceed to launch.
Yep.
We're expecting that in about a minute. That is the time that the launch team briefed.
I've been doing better lately, mainly because lately I've been a lot less in crisis mode like I have been over the past 4 years.
And so arming the launch escape system was supposed to happen around T-minus 39 minutes. Obviously, if it happens, it were to be later. Still okay if
Absolutely, yeah.
that margin.
The driving factor, so yeah, as I mentioned, as we get closer and closer to launch, the margin of pads they build in just gets a little tighter. But yeah, the
They do have a little, I think they have a little bit of wiggle room, though. They had about 11-minute, they have an 11-minute launch window, starting at about 48 past the hour.
The launch escape system is armed, which is a pretty quick command and pretty instantaneous for those valves to change. It's more that they have to back out how much time does it take to fuel the rocket and make sure they preserve that amount of time.
Again, we're going to stand by for what we expect to be a decision.
Dragon SpaceX.
Here we go.
This time your go for 6.4 arm launch escape system. Team is
They just called,
confident that we understand
they're now in the
extremely well
process of
and
arming the
proceed with
launch
LES
escape
arm
system ahead
as
of
within
tanking
existing
operations.
analysis.
Dragon copy. Go to close seat visors. Visors closed, so we are arming the launch escape system.
So they've closed their visors, and they're in the process of arming the launch escape systems,
And with
at
that
which
call
point
out, again,
they will be
arming the
ready to
launch
start
escape
loading
system, one of
propellant
the major milestones
on both stages.
liftoff
I believe
today
they may have already
at
loaded the
10:53
TTEB,
p.m.
triethyl
and
aluminum,
38
triethyl
seconds
boring,
ignition time.
which is the ignition source
From Kennedy
for
Space Center here
all
in
the
Florida to
all the
send
Merlin 1D
3
and the Merlin
astronauts and
1D
1 cosmonaut to
vacuum
the
optimized
International
engine, or
Space
MVAC,
Station.
on the second stage.
This is the Crew-8 launch, and you're watching the live broadcast of it.
So you heard the acknowledgement for them to go ahead and complete the procedure. So you expect that you'll hear some
Launch escape system is verified armed.
They just called armed of the launch escape system, which means tanking operations will start shortly.
Now, needing to use the launch escape system, it's just a possibility we have to plan for. No one wants to think about it, but it is something we have to plan for.
Yeah, actually, it makes the overall launch safer because you have an alternative if there's something wrong with the F9 rocket. So yeah, you're absolutely correct. You wouldn't want to have to use it, but the fact that we built that into these commercial crew vehicles is a huge safety improvement over the past. And it looks like they're starting loading prop now, which is the next major step. And so now that the launch escape system is armed, they can start putting the prop onto the vehicle. You'll start to hear calls. And again, the crew can actually feel some of these things. They don't actually have direct insight into the actual fuel levels inside the Falcon 9, but they have a timeline.
A lot of times they'll also hear some of the stuff, including and especially the venting of LO2 just after they complete loading of the second stage with liquid oxygen.
On schedule at T-minus 35 minutes from liftoff.
And so at this point, the crew, like I mentioned, with the launch escape system armed, is pretty much in flight mode. So you know, they're watching the timeline and will be monitoring the calls they get from the ground as that kind of layout if the prop loading is happening according to timeline. And then for us watching on TV, a really super easy way to see how full it is just as the condensation comes off the rocket. That gives you a sense of how far.
Not to mention, you'll see
tank,
ice form as well. There'll be a layer of ice around that
fuel
condensation
outside
as
to go
well.
into the tank and then evaporate.
Yeah, right now we have RP1 or rocket grade kerosene going in, and also liquid oxygen loading on the first stage.
And again, the reason, just like with the LES arming or the launch escape system arming, as well as the prop loading, they make those calls to the crews.
And TTEB, triethyl aluminum, triethyl boring, those substances are what are called pyrophoric substances, meaning they ignite upon contact with oxygen, whether it is pure oxygen that's coming from the LO2 tanks on the vehicle, or with air. With ambient air.
So inside,
that's also
Endeavour right
and the
now,
triethyl boring
the
portion of it
commander,
was
Matt
what
Dominic,
was used to ignite
born
the
and raised in
JP7
Leaf
propellant
Ridge,
in
Colorado,
the
married
J58
to Faith
engines by Pratt &
Dominic,
Whitney aboard
and
the
they have 2
SR-71
daughters.
Blackbird.
He has a Master of Science degree in Systems Engineering from the Naval Postgraduate School, designated a Naval Aviator in 2007, made 2 deployments to the North Arabian Sea. He has more than
And it also bears noting that in the
1,600 hours of
past,
flight time
most
in different aircraft.
most of the past astronauts, and many still are former military pilots or military service people, and a lot of newer ones nowadays are oftentimes civilian.
Is re-entry heating soaking through a damaged seal? We do believe the crack is bounded.
It's not so much flammable as it is. It can, like I said, it can ignite in the presence of oxygen.
Second copy.
Read Ignition by John D. Clark recently. Read a lot about the wild compounds that ignite on contact with everything. Oh, yeah. Including and especially one of the ones that was used, which was really nasty on the R-16, which ended up contributing very wildly to the Nedelin catastrophe.
Clearly they're not going to let them launch.
And that's red fuming nitric acid, which is essentially nitric acid combined with dinitrogen tetroxide, or sometimes called nitrogen tetroxide, N2O4, which by itself is nasty and even corrosive. And that is usually used in conjunction with various hydrazine fuels. Usually, in most other countries, it would be unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine, which basically...
And the concern of that crack would be during re-entry.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. So I think.
Oh boy, I hope like how this is not going to be another repeat of Columbia. But then again, hopefully, the way those things normally work is that you have the blunt side of the vehicle facing into the direction of travel, and it comes in what is called a sliding re-entry, which means it follows the curvature of the Earth while descending.
We can pour over those photos, go back to the SMEs, the REs that you heard them called, the responsible engineers, the subject matter experts, and use that photo evidence.
And one thing to bear in mind about that hatch, it just got closed, I'd say about half an hour ago, and won't be reopened again in about 6 months after the vehicle has splashed down with her crew inside.
Stage 1 cryo loading, as you said.
Cryo-helium.
Yeah.
Yeah. So helium.
And they also have liquid helium that go into tanks, which are called COPV, or composite overwrap pressure vessels. What they do is they release helium. They off-gas helium into the system to provide back pressure as the tank contents deplete.
To T0.
Otherwise, as the tanks start to continue to deplete, the tanks would then implode and collapse. Collapse, then implode. Excuse me.
An issue still in review.
Let's see.
Which is a small crack in the side hatch seal. The team briefed the crew just a few minutes ago, saying that they are reviewing it, but they believe it is small enough to fix. And that is why propellant loading continues.
Correct. Yeah.
Question is, will they be doing it? Will they be doing it on orbit, or how that's going to work? But like I said, it only affects the re-entry part of the flight profile. We'll see what it is. We'll see what happens.
The crew is kind of just going through procedures and talking through the ascent again. The next big point for them will be at about T-minus 10 minutes, where they'll start again talking back and forth to the ground. Sounds like maybe they might get an update as well, as my guess. They'll probably get an update about that point.
And as I've said, and as I say on my posts before streams like this, scrub disclaimers are in effect.
Human spaceflight is so important, and here's what they had to say.
Let's hear what they have to say here.
Everything we learn on space station enables our technology. It increases our knowledge, and it burns down our risk as we go further.
As explorers, we're looking at ways to further human knowledge, human experience.
Как сказал однажды Константин Эдуардович Циолковский, наша Земля — это колыбель человечества. Но не может человечество все время оставаться в колыбели. Поэтому именно за счет того, что мы нарабатываем сейчас пилотируемыми полетами.
People are so different on Earth. The more people we get into space, the more things we learn about what happens to their body in space, the more we learn to move humanity further to the moon and then ultimately to Mars.
The experiments that we'll conduct help with radiation, how to grow plants in space, how to get the human body to last longer outside of Earth's
And that looks like one of the.
In zero gravity, we've actually
that must be one of the ones from. I can't remember that one.
That we didn't even know existed.
That was a private one that was a free flight, meaning it never docked with anything.
To lower your blood volume to adapt to a weightless environment, mechanisms that store sodium in your body, which we didn't know existed, ways that the human can control its cardiovascular system that we didn't know existed.
Every single human that's ever been born and ever died has all happened on our planet Earth. And if we want to continue the light of consciousness further, we need to make ourselves multiplanetary.
Go further we will, go further we must, but we want to have that deck stacked in our favor as much as possible, and our mission will definitely contribute to that.
And that's Olympus Mons on Mars.
T-minus 27 minutes and 10 seconds and counting to launch. Let's head back to Jasmine Hopkins, who's now with NASA Administrator Bill Nelson and Deputy Administrator Pam Melroy.
Thank you so much, Megan. As always, it's an honor to have our NASA leadership here for our launch. And of course, we know there's a couple watch items right now with Crew-8, but both of our leaders right here have been to space before. So actually, can you guys talk about why safety is so paramount in human spaceflight?
Well, you're dealing with a very unforgiving environment with a lot of explosive power, and you're defying the laws of gravity. And as a result, everything has to be right, so you don't launch until it's right. Now, Pam is an astronaut space shuttle commander. She's flown 3 times in space. I've flown once. And you've been through this many times. You didn't have as many scrubs as we had on ours. We got in, strapped in, ready to go, and scrubbed 4 times over the better part of a month. But that pretty well tells you you don't launch until it's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right, Bill. I had several scrubs of my own, delayed 6 days for my first flight, 3 days for my second, had a couple of strap-ins. You're right, not as many as you. But I think, it's important to remember that the crew is very focused on their mission on the space station, and it's not like they're saying, hey, I've got to get home for something. They're going to wait until they're safe, and that's
Stage
the way
2
we
cryo
feel
helium
too.
loading has
As
started.
Bill said, a lot of things have to go right, and we're going to keep safety number one.
Right. Thank you so much for mentioning that. And of course, we're on our 8th rotational flight with SpaceX. It feels like just yesterday, Demo 2 launched. So can Bill Nelson, can you speak to the progress of the commercial crew program?
Well, it's unbelievable. Just think how much the cost of launching has come down as a fact of reusing the rockets. And just the Falcon 9 has been such a proven workhorse. This past year, they launched Falcon 9s, if you can believe it, 96 times. This year, they're going to launch 146 times. And next year, 200 times. Wow, it's a workhorse.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. And we've had a lot of success with SpaceX already this year with the launch of PACE to help study our climate. We also had a successful landing on the moon for the first time in over 50 years. So Pam, can you speak to what's next for SpaceX and NASA together?
Well, Jasmine, it's amazing what's coming up. First of all, the crew is going to have a very exciting increment. They have over 200 science experiments that they'll be running, including several medical experiments that will benefit all humanity. But while they're there, they're going to have some very exciting visitors. We're really looking forward to seeing Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore launch on the Boeing Starliner on the first crewed flight test of that brand new human spaceflight vehicle. They'll be visiting the station. And then, if we stay on schedule, this increment will also see a new cargo vehicle going up with Sierra Space's Dream Chaser. And then you look at the rest of what we're doing in science. We have an eclipse coming up. It'll be the last eclipse visible in North America for almost 2 decades. And then we'll be launching NISAR, which is our partnership with India, to look at the Earth. And we also have the X-59, our new X-plane, quiet supersonic boom coming up. And then, of course, the Artemis 2 crew, you're going to be seeing a lot of them down here in Florida as they're training for their mission next year.
Right.
This is a pretty thrilling year. We got a lot going on.
It really is. There's so much going on, but of course, we still want to keep our eyes right now on Crew-8. So thank you so much, Bill and Pam, for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.
They
All
call
right,
it
our friend
cryo.
at SpaceX, back to you.
They call helium load on second stage, which is the again the back pressure into that is used to clear the pressure into the void.
The International Space Station tonight. Sitting atop the Falcon 9, the Dragon spacecraft and its trunk stands over 26 feet tall.
Starliner or delay liner, as my friend Saturn calls it. Hopefully, it won't be delayed any further. Yeah, absolutely. That has been a lot of delays with that one, especially after the first one, where it used up much of its propellant, so all it could do is do a re-entry test.
Unpressurized cargo.
And Dragon has 16 Draco thrusters that can be used in space to help navigate the spacecraft to its destination.
Several of those Draco thrusters is underneath the cap that covers the hatch,
which are no longer active once the crew is in orbit.
For those of you following along, you'll know that the Dragon spacecraft has played a significant role in advancing our future in space by safely transporting crew to and from the space station. There are currently 4 Dragon spacecraft supporting human spaceflight missions that have docked to the station: Endeavour, Resilience, Endurance, and Freedom.
Crew-8 will fly aboard Endeavour tonight, which previously flew NASA's SpaceX demo mission 2, Crew-2, and Crew-6, in addition to Axiom's first mission, the very first commercial astronaut mission to the International Space Station.
and as they said earlier this year, Axiom 3 went up.
Has completed 7 human spaceflight missions on behalf of NASA and visited the space station 38 times under NASA's commercial resupply and commercial.
Hey, Puzzle, how you doing?
As always, Dragon will be delivered to orbit today by SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket, which provides 1.7 million pounds of thrust on its first stage thanks to its 9 Merlin M1D engines. Once the first and second stages separate, these engines are also used to help land.
Doing good, awesome.
The first stage will perform 3 burns as it makes its way back toward Earth today. First is the boost back burn, and that's where 3 of the M1D engines will reignite to help flip the first stage around to head back to the launch site. The second burn is the entry burn, and that's where a single engine will reignite to help slow Falcon 9 down as it prepares to enter the Earth's atmosphere again.
This will be my first time covering this new flight profile, where basically they burn the first stage a bit shorter, and then the second stage a bit longer, and then of course, and in that that Merlin vacuum optimized engine is enshrouded in that black upper stage. Excuse me, black inner stage, which is made of carbon fiber composites. And below that are the grid fins.
RP1 load is complete. That's great. We're continuing to check through these milestones.
Sounds like the fuel load is complete, and of course the oxidizers are still loading.
Dragon's entry into low Earth orbit before separating, leaving Dragon to continue its journey to the space station on its own thrusters. About 40 seconds after separation, Dragon's nose cone deploy sequence will begin, which exposes its guidance navigation controls that help Dragon autonomously fly to the space station.
With T0 coming up in just about 19 minutes and 30 seconds, our teams at the Cape and Hangar X are doing a series of system checks to ensure Dragon and Falcon 9 are ready. Let's check in with Ronnie for a quick status update. Ronnie?
Thanks, Jesse. We are still looking good for an on-time launch about 19 minutes from now, and we'll keep monitoring all the vehicle systems as we get closer to liftoff. Both Dragon and Falcon 9 continue to be healthy. So as we continue to listen and watch the countdown, our teams are continuing to prep the vehicle for flight, and propellant loading of both RP1 and liquid oxygen began at T-minus 35 minutes. We also heard the call out a few minutes ago that the launch escape system is now armed. The range, which is monitoring keep-out zones, among other key flight requirements, also continues to report no issues, as they are go to support tonight's launch. Weather also looks good, and we are still tracking less than a 10% chance of violation at our target liftoff.
Oh, that's good. Less than a 10%. That's awesome. That's 90.
Driven by the orbital mechanics constraints of 2
That's 90% plus chance of launch.
The reason we need to launch at a specific time is because Dragon is basically trying to catch up to the ISS, which as we speak is orbiting the Earth at more than 17,000 miles per hour. That means we have to
We're
deliver
about Mach
Dragon to the
22.
correct orbit, and we also need to time its trajectory relative to the orbiting laboratory so that they are in the same place in orbit at the same time. A precise liftoff is crucial for achieving a timely rendezvous between Dragon and the space station. So at this point, if we hear a hold called for any reason, we will have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity, which is tomorrow at 10:31 p.m. Eastern. So with all
And what they'll
systems
say
go,
is
I'm going to
hold,
turn it
hold,
over to
hold,
Rebecca for
providing a
status
reason.
update from Houston.
Thanks, Ronnie. The flight controllers here in Mission Control Houston are ensuring the space station is ready to receive Dragon. They're also checking that all the communication links between the station, Dragon, and the ground are working properly. Right now, everything is proceeding as planned. The teams here in Mission Control Houston, the team in Hawthorne, and the astronauts aboard the space station will monitor the autonomous docking of Dragon on Tuesday when they enter joint operations, which happens when the spacecraft enters the approach ellipsoid, which is an invisible boundary that helps us monitor spacecrafts arriving and departing. After docking, the crews will perform
Dragon
a series of
SpaceX
leak
for an
checks
update.
and then
Teams are
work
still
to...
working. Expect more words here in a few minutes, shooting for T-minus 10 minutes to get you a brief.
And we just received an update that we are proceeding towards launch. Once the crews perform those series of leak checks on board, they will work to open the hatches both on the Dragon side and inside the station's pressurized mating adapter. We expect hatch opening to take place about an hour and a half after docking. Once on board, the astronauts will be greeted by the space station crew and will then join in for welcoming remarks for the...
They just started the stage 2 load of liquid oxygen, which
Here
is
in
the
Mission
oxidizer.
Control Flight Director Garrett Hain is on console overseeing the team for launch, and Paul Kanya will be on console on Tuesday for docking. That's it from here in Mission Control Houston. I'll toss it back to the team in Florida. Megan, how's it looking?
Thank you, Rebecca. If you're just joining us, we are now at T-minus 16 minutes, 7 seconds and counting from the 8th astronaut rotation mission to the International Space Station under NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Rajachari, commander of the SpaceX, NASA SpaceX Crew-3 mission here with me. And Raja, we just heard a call out saying to expect another crew brief at T-minus 10 minutes about the crack that the teams are currently monitoring in the side hatch seal.
Yep, and that's a pretty standard at T-minus 10 is usually when they've kind of done all the final polling and usually give an update to the crew and for the crew to make sure that they're all ready to go
So
inside the capsule.
basically what's going on is that they're in the process, they're sort of in a holding pattern on that, and we won't hear anything until within about 5.5 minutes from now as far as that particular conference. They may even elect a scrub. It all depends on how things are looking at that point in time.
When they'll give them some information about it. And so, yeah, it's always exciting, and I think the administrator said exactly what we would expect and exactly why we do what we do.
In the past, also, just to give you an idea what was going on in terms of the flight profile, in the past they would launch and burn the first stage for about 2.5 minutes, at which point they would have MECO, or main engine cutoff, separate the two stages, and then ignite the Merlin MVAC engine, the Merlin 1D vacuum-optimized engine, which has a much longer and wider nozzle because of the expansion ratio needed to handle vacuum thrust in a vacuum. And the 9 Merlin 1D engines at the base of the first stage are sea level optimized. They're much smaller and shorter.
Great. I'm so stoked for your launch and to welcome you on board the International Space Station. I very vividly remember my first few days on Space Station, so I'm looking forward to getting to relive those days through your eyes, and I'll try not to laugh too much. Matt, it's been an amazing 7 years so far. It's going to be really special to get to fly with you, such a good friend, and I know this is going to be one of our craziest adventures together yet. Mike,
T-minus 14 minutes and counting.
With you. Jeanette, looking forward to continuing the good times that we had in Star City together. Sasha,
Star City is in Russia, which is where they, which is where cosmonauts and anybody going aboard the Soyuz train.
I hope you enjoy the special time that you're going to get to have in Dragon together orbiting Earth. And we'll be on board waiting with a big meal prepared with all the foods that we don't like. So with that, safe travels, and
nice.
I'll see you on the other side of the hatch on Space Station.
I like that you said she'll try
And
not
we're
to
in the
laugh
area
so much
where
as we're
the area
like
that they're
new
photographing from now is where press and visitors can come and watch the vehicle launch from relatively close up. And in certain cases, a lot of journalists and YouTubers will oftentimes go to the top of the vehicle assembly building, or VAB, which is where the Saturn V and the space shuttle and now SLS is stacked.
On the next Soyuz up to replace Laurel. So we'll be tuning into that just a few weeks from now on March 21st.
T-minus 12 minutes, 48 seconds and counting. We are counting down really to a T-minus 10 brief with the crew to talk an issue that the team is working. Roger, can you talk to us about that? What are your final thoughts as we approach that?
Yeah, so I mean, we got to see, I think we kind of had an inkling just watching, you even brought it up as we were watching the hatch close out, just a lot more time taking pictures. And as we talked about at the time, the reason we do that, and they mentioned even back then, they said they maybe saw hair. And so as they go through and analyze those pictures, it sounds like, at least from what we could hear on the loops we can hear, and there's probably a whole bunch more going on in the background, that they're doing some analysis to see that a crack they saw in one of the photos, it sounds like. Whether that case and the analysis shows that we have what's called margin, meaning there's not any concerns for the worst case scenario of a reentry, as it sounds like what they're calling the bounding case. So that analysis I expect will be ongoing. It would not be unusual for them to tell the crew, even at T-minus 10, like, hey, we're still working it. We'll get you an update prior to launch. Because again, the more time you buy the team to do the analysis, the more conclusive of a recommendation they can come to. So I would expect them to be poring over that data, and like we talked about earlier in the show, that's why we have all these teams here looking at the data.
Sure.
There's no more important thing than the human and human space flight, and so we want to be absolutely sure that they are good to go on their way to the space station.
And when we take that wide shot,
here we go. Coming up on the 1 minute mark before that brief will take place.
Again, propellant loading continues.
Dragon SpaceX for a follow-up.
Go ahead.
All right. We are confident that we understand the issue and we can still fly the whole mission safely. We're comfortable proceeding because the condition is bounding by existing analysis, as already mentioned. Additionally, we expect the gap created by this crack in the seal to close as the material will swell with reentry heating. And finally, it's on the lower heating side of the vehicle during reentry. The engineering team here is comfortable proceeding. How copy?
Dragon copy.
Okay, so
with that, Crew-8.
Hi, Marachi, how you doing? And hi, Suzuku over on VStream. My good friend and I are watching as well. How are you doing? And I heard you say you were feeling good, and it's good to hear. Awesome. I'm feeling awesome.
It's time for Crew-8 to relieve you of the watch onto the International Space Station. SpaceX Dragon, we are ready for you to cast off the strongback and launch Dragon Endeavour on its 5th voyage.
There you have it, the team confidence that they can fly this
T-minus 10 minutes and counting. They're still loading propellants on both stages. They've already loaded RP1, which is refined petroleum 1, which is a highly refined form of kerosene. Godspeed, Crew-8, they called.
Thanks so much. So with that and Crew-8 sounding excited for liftoff, our next major countdown event will be around the T-minus 9.5 minute mark, when the Falcon
which is about coming right now.
Criteria get checked by computers.
Here we go.
Right now we're
T-minus 9 minutes, 30 seconds.
The launch commit criteria are specific thresholds and pieces of information about the entire Falcon 9 system needed to make sure that the rocket is healthy. Of course, we have many systems in place to ensure that the rocket and crew are both safe leading up to liftoff.
Hold on, launch. I need to go to the bathroom. Yeah, right.
Our teams are performing all those final checks before launch.
And here we go, coming up on T-minus 9 minutes and counting mark.
There's a variety of systems and console positions that are also being worked in tandem and monitored by the team. These include
the next event that's coming up is at T-minus 7 minutes or for engine chill. What they'll do is they'll flow some liquid oxygen into all 9 sea-level Merlin 1D engines at the base of the first stage, getting them down to operating temperature, and also to make sure that the liquid oxygen stays liquid as they get ready to enter the combustion chamber.
And along the the way leading up to this, you'll be hearing some performance calls as we get into the final countdown, and then after liftoff as well. These are SpaceX flight controllers reporting on trajectory, speed, booster performance, and key milestones. But there are some other calls you'll hear the crew make as well after liftoff. The crew will report out number and letter combinations, which mark different abort zones throughout the flight up the eastern seaboard. The first two, 1A and 1B, have that name because they're in the first stage, and that will last until they're up to the very north of North Carolina. The next are 2A through 2E. Those will come into play once the second stage kicks in. That takes us from the top of North Carolina all the way to the tip of Newfoundland in the northern Atlantic. Diverting a little bit from the other naming systems, you will hear the call Shannon, or Forward to Shannon, which refers to Shannon, Ireland, meaning they would target off the coast of Ireland if they were later in that second stage
Coming
and
up
did need
on
to abort.
engine chill at
So
T
again,
minus
you'll
7
hear
minutes.
These different call-outs throughout the flight uphill, along
And it
with
will
key
happen on the
performance
on the
calls
second
from
stage
guidance,
engine, the
navigation,
Merlin
and control
1D
officers,
vacuum
and you
optimized
can
engine, or
expect to hear
MVAC.
from them on calls on trajectory and propulsion as well.
So one of the next call-outs we're listening for is the announcement that Stage 1 engine chill has started, which is one of the key processes that prepares the engines for flight. Right now, propellant in the tanks is isolated from the engines.
Here we go, coming up on engine chill at T minus 7 minutes. T minus 7 minutes and counting, mark.
Through the Merlin engine pumps,
Engine chill
chilling
has
the
started.
engines for the start sequence.
There's the call. The engines have started to go into the chill phase where they're flowing liquid oxygen in there to get everything down to operating temperature. Otherwise, they would have thermal shock if they did everything right at T0. And the RS-25, the engines that power the space shuttle and will power SLS and have powered SLS, will be. They do much the same thing. Pretty much of the countdown just prior to T0. Well, actually, T minus 6 seconds, which is when all 3 on the shuttle and all 4 on SLS are ignited. They're coming up on a completion of the RP1 load, which is the fuel on both stages.
So with that engine chill now underway, we're looking ahead to the call-out that RP1
They just called RP1 load complete. They have full fuel load on there.
Is complete. RP1 is densified kerosene or rocket fuel that will propel the crew into
Just under
orbit.
6 minutes till launch.
Is now loaded into the first stage, and we did hear
And the strong back that they referred to earlier is that girder-like structure that runs along the side of the vehicle. It bears in mind it's called the transporter erector because it is transported to the hangar up to the pad. It's integrated in the horizontal position, much like the Soyuz is, as well as the Proton M, which are Russian launch vehicles. It's rolled out to the pad and then rotated into the vertical position. And another vehicle that does much the same thing is Electron.
Degrees, and then we'll see it swing open completely the moment of liftoff. That strong back provides access to
that starts at about T minus 4.5 minutes. The strong back or transporter erector or TE will start to angle back about 2 degrees, starting at about T minus 4 minutes 30 seconds.
Flight, where we will hear that the liquid oxygen is finished on board the second stage.
T minus 5 minutes and counting. We got about less than half a minute until they start to move back the transporter erector or TE. They're starting to pressurize the tank just to make sure everything is good, because the vehicle will no longer be supported by the transporter erector.
Computers now are taking control of this spacecraft. The first stage will finish liquid oxygen loading in about 3 minutes, followed by completion of second stage LOX loading 1 minute later.
Here we go. He should be starting to the strong. First, what happens is that there's a clamp that's just below the trunk, which is that black thing, which is the solar panels on the backside of the vehicle. And we're going to start seeing the clamp start to open just momentarily, and shortly thereafter, the entire TE will start to move back.
That will allow the strong back to recline about
now you can see the clamp on there a little bit easier now that some of the stuff. There they go. The clamp is now opening.
We know that it's strong enough to stand on its own. That TE will throw back all the way to 45 degrees liftoff. The strong back is part of the transporter erector, which provides liquids, gases, and electrical connections to the vehicle.
And on top of that, it can also provide air conditioning both to the crewed vehicles as well as any uncrewed vehicles like satellites and the like. And here goes the
And
transporter
so the next
erector. It is
major
now pulling
milestone
back, and
that
you'll
we're
see a
tracking
lot of
today
the.
is stage 1 LOX load being complete. We expect that
And
call
you're
out
going
at
to
about
also
3
see some of
minutes
those
when that first
umbilicals
stage LOX
attaching
load
to
will
the
be completely
launch
finished.
vehicle, as well as
So all those white clouds vapor you see on
the
your
capsule
screen right
itself.
now are normal, and we'll continue to see them build up as we get even closer to launch. Because liquid oxygen is super chilled, it boils off a little bit in the warm Florida air.
Pretty soon we're going to hear a call for LOX load complete on the first stage.
Stage 1 LOX load complete.
There's the call. The entire LOX load is complete on the first stage. Next, in about a minute and a half or so, will be call for liquid oxygen load on the second stage completing.
On board stage 2. Then we'll prepare to vent down the TE, which is going to produce another.
And you're going to see a big, huge.
Terminal count and is on
You may
internal
also
power.
hear.
They've transferred from ground-based power to power aboard the vehicle
Dragon is
itself.
on internal power. You may also hear an announcement to the crew about that venting procedure.
They should be finishing stage 2 LOX load momentarily,
So everything
followed by venting
continuing
of
to
the
go as planned.
LOX lines in the transporter erector line.
2 minutes and 20 seconds away from the launch of Crew-8. Standing by, in about 15 seconds, we should hear the call out that the second stage LOX load is complete and that Dragon is in auto idle.
T-minus 2 minutes and counting.
Stage 2 LOX load complete.
And the next milestone on the countdown is T-minus 1 minute, where a whole bunch of things happen. First of all is one that's called going to startup mode, which is where control of the vehicle and the countdown transfers from ground-based computers to computers aboard the spacecraft.
From the Falcon 9 rocket, they'll then get
And at about T-minus 45 to 40 seconds or so, we'll hear call-outs from launch controller and the crew for launch readiness.
vented over just shortly.
Now they're starting to vent the liquid oxygen. There it goes. They're starting to vent all the lines in the transporter erector inside of a minute and a half until launch.
Something else you might see here in a few moments is water being poured onto the pad because
And that is the deluge system that basically protects the pad from acoustic energy. You'll see much the same thing during the next Starship launch coming up on T-minus 1 minute. T-minus 1 minute and counting.
1 minute until launch.
There's the call. Vehicle is now in startup, and it is in control with the vehicle's critical systems, monitoring the health of all of them, and controlling the rest of the countdown coming up on launch director and crew readiness call. Standing by.
SpaceX, go for launch.
There's the LD call.
Go for launch.
There's the crew call. Everything is go for launch.
Reports go. Crew reports go.
T-minus
Now
30
we're
seconds
about
and counting.
30 seconds away from liftoff.
$20, 15, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
Full power
And liftoff of Falcon 9 carrying Crew Dragon Endeavour with 3 astronauts and a cosmonaut headed for the International Space Station, and the vehicle has cleared the tower. They're pitching down range to place it above water in the case of an abort scenario at about the T-plus 50 second mark or so, and just before that they will start throttling the engines down ahead of entry into Mach 1 and entering into the area of maximum aerodynamic pressure, or max Q, which is the maximum amount of atmospheric pressure the vehicle will withstand during the course of ascent.
Nominal power and telemetry.
They're throttling down all 9 Merlin 1D engines at the base of the first stage. Coming up on Mach 1.
Falcon 9 engines now throttling down to help pass through the period of maximum dynamic pressure.
They just broke the sound barrier, heading past Mach 1, about to enter the area of maximum aerodynamic pressure, or max Q.
So with that call out,
Copy 1 Bravo.
we know that Falcon 9 is throttling back up. And that one call out for 1 Bravo means that we are in the second and final abort mode for the first stage, continuing to get.
They are now They're now increasing throttle to full thrust.
Already pulling over to.
Now they're starting to chill the Merlin 1D in vacuum optimized engine on the second stage, like they did on the ground with the sea level ones.
Also begun. That also means we have a couple of events that are going to happen in rapid succession. First is that chill on the MVAC engine, and then we'll have main engine cutoff, or MECO, where the 9 engines on the first stage of Falcon 9 will cut off ahead of first and second stage separation.
They're about ready to start throttling the engines down
Second stage will ignite and
to reduce the amount of
astronauts to orbit.
reducing the amount of stress on the vehicle and the astronauts within Crew Dragon ahead of staging and ignition of. They're throttling down the engines. There goes the and on top of that, that's only because there's no oxygen where they are, and otherwise you would see flames. Standing by for MECO. They called MECO. We have main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
They're calling staging from the first stage on the left and second stage on the right.
MVAC ignition.
We have MVAC ignition on the second stage, and the first stage is turning around, getting ready to light 3 engines to head it back to the Cape for landing at landing zone 1. There go the engines on the first stage, sending it back to the Cape, and that engine and the engine bell you see on the red hot stuff that you see on the engine bell on the second stage is perfectly normal. That is a niobium bell that is doing radiative cooling, and the black area above that is film cooling provided by exhaust from the turbo pump, which is moving enormous amounts of propellant from the vehicle into the from the vehicle's tanks into the combustion chamber.
On the left-hand side of your screen.
And pretty soon they're gonna go ahead and quench those 3 engines.
In just about 10 seconds.
And you can see the 2 of the grid fins, which will help with maneuvering the vehicle once it enters the atmosphere. They're now cutting off the engines for that, and now they're going to go ahead and deploy the grid fins. And this burn will last about 8 minutes.
Until we reach about 8 minutes into the flight.
Dragon SpaceX trajectory nominal.
I never figured out, did they have extra programs to make a RTLS Crew Dragon missions work? You know, that's a good question.
On the second stage, the crew's G-load dips right when we hit the separation event, and it's going to continue to build up now. Again, we just heard another call out for nominal trajectory. That was the guidance, navigation, and control officer stating nominal trajectory, or everything is looking good. Dragon is
going right down the middle of the corridor.
Continuing its flight uphill.
And it's at a 51.6 degree angle against the inclination against the equator, which is the orbit on which is the same inclination as the International Space Station is at, and right now hopefully in sync with that particular orbit.
93 miles in altitude. That single Merlin vacuum engine can produce over 220,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum
for that matter,
space, and you really see it doing the heavy lifting.
The extra performance to launch another V2 mini Starlink satellite per flight out of Cape Canaveral. Yeah.
Continues on its way to
Good
the
question.
International Space Station. The first stage booster is on its way back to landing zone 1.
Trajectory nominal.
Everything's sounding good so far. Right down the middle.
That the trajectory for both vehicles is looking good. Now, the first stage has a couple of events itself in order to land. At T plus 6 minutes and 16 seconds, stage 1 will begin its entry burn, which will be the first of 2 burns prior to landing. During this burn, Falcon 9 will ignite only the center engine for about 10 seconds in order to slow the vehicle down before it reaches the denser parts of the Earth's atmosphere. That will be followed by the landing burn at T plus 7 minutes and 21 seconds. This time we'll light 3 engines, and the burn will last for about 20 seconds, ending just about a minute before we expect Dragon to be inserted into orbit.
Normally what happened in the past, what they would do, they would actually go and they would actually use 3 than 1 to land it on a barge called an autonomous drone ship.
That is one of the ground stations that we're receiving telemetry from, and everything.
And there's a view of the coast.
To look really good with the trajectory. The crew now traveling over 6,000 miles per hour.
They should be igniting They should be igniting that one engine in the descent burn momentarily. And because of the flight profile, they can change the. They only need to burn 1 engine.
Again, this second stage.
They just lit the first. They just lit the engine to slow the descent. There it goes.
The vehicle will
There's
coast
the
for a
entry
few
burn,
minutes.
and they have entry burn cut off. And also, you see those little puffs? Those are what are called cold gas nitrogen thrusters. They're spraying nitrogen gas to adjust the attitude as it goes through the atmosphere, and also particularly in the vacuum where they don't have any kind of aerodynamic authority just yet. That is going to change momentarily, and the grid fins will be able to take control. Still nominal on the second stage.
Continuing to get good call-outs, everything going smoothly. Now almost 7 minutes into the flight of Crew-8.
So the next milestone
They're coming close to igniting all three of those engines. Numbers 1, 5, and 9. 1 and 5 are on either side of engine 9. There the engines are lighting up. There's number 1, 9 rather, followed by engines 1 and 5. There go, and you can also see the grid fins moving, and we'll see legs deploying. There they go. We hear sonic booms as it gets ready to touch down, and we have touchdown of the first stage at landing zone 1 at Cape Canaveral.
And it is great to see that first stage back on Earth.
And and pretty soon they're going to be doing the call out for Shannon, which is near the end of the second stage's burn.
As that first stage successfully landed back on Earth. So second engine cutoff will take place here in just a couple of minutes. Once the lone Merlin engine cuts off and stops,
and you can see the manifold that directs some of the turbopump exhaust into the throat and the upper part of the nozzle.
Fly free with Crew-8 still on board and in orbit.
Their internal guidance mean they're nearing the end of powered flight. Got about a minute or so left in the burn, at which point they'll have SECO 1, or second engine cutoff number 1. There will be no further burns. There's the call. They're almost done. They're within a minute of SECO 1, or second engine cutoff 1. About a few minutes after that will be deployment of the Crew Dragon vehicle with its trunk. They just called ENVTuber shutdown. We have SECO 1.
The Merlin engine is about to shut down. You just saw it there on your screen.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
They just called nominal orbital insertion. It's going to be an elliptical orbit at this point, but normally there's the interior of the trunk, and they have some, I don't know if they actually have anything active in there.
That launch escape system.
I don't know what they're using for their zero-G indicator this time, if anything.
Inside Endeavour, 3 of them in space for the very first time. So again, we'll continue to coast for these few minutes after that second stage just shut down. This helps to allow rates and motion to settle out. There are actually small reaction thrusters on the upper part of the second stage that can be used to counteract any residual motion, basically making sure that we're in a stable coast before Dragon separates.
Certainly
from
these
Falcon.
days there will be a I wish.
To occur at about the 12 minute
I really wish. I don't have any merch, otherwise I'd gladly send it up there.
Successfully inserted into a good orbit. This is the crew in microgravity, 3 of them for the very first time, all good call-outs.
And pretty soon they will be getting ready to deploy the Crew-9 the crew capsule and the trunk. The trunk is also used for unpressurized storage of any kind of cargo that doesn't need pressurization.
From stage 2.
And we'll probably see footage from the vehicle itself when they do that.
after which a number of activation checkouts occur automatically. First, we'll be checking out 12 of the Draco maneuvering thrusters all around the service section of the Dragon.
The remaining 4 are under the nose cap.
We'll also begin to get ready for nose cone opening. Nose cone stays closed for the flight uphill to help protect all of those guidance, navigation, and control.
And there's the manifold that's coming off the turbopump exhaust. There's the interior.
That will be used for the majority
Takodachi zero-G indicator. I'll have to look at that a little bit later. I wonder if Nino Ioannis knows about that.
So we are standing by for
Who knows?
Dragon separation to occur here in just about 30 seconds from now.
Of course, the view you have right now on your screen. Oh, actually, now that our view has transitioned, you're getting a great view of Dragon's heat shield. This camera is on top of stage 2 and looking up into Dragon's trunk.
Looks like they don't have anything in here this time. Now saying that'd be fun. Oh, yeah, it would be.
So if you're just joining us this evening, we had a successful launch of Crew-8.
How do you know so much about the launch? I've been watching this a lot, and I wanted to bring this to the world of VTubers. There they go. They're deploying. There they go. They have separation of Crew Dragon and the top of the on the top of the second stage, and now it's free flying on its own.
Dragon and Endeavour now flying free.
Dragon, SpaceX, this is your launch chief engineer.
Go ahead.
Welcome to orbit. It truly is our greatest honor for you to trust us to launch you into space. It's been a pleasure working with you, and we trust that all the science and work you're about to do will continue to move humanity further towards the stars. We hope you enjoyed the ride, and thank you for flying on Falcon 9. Please send our regards to Crew 7, and make sure to remind them you just wanted to be fashionably late. I'll hand it off to the launch director.
How good.
I hope the ride was as awesome as a Cybertruck. Safe journey to the space station. We look forward to seeing you when you get home. Thank you for flying SpaceX.
And there's mission control in Hawthorne for SpaceX. And we are seeing thruster firings on the vehicle.
SpaceX, oh my goodness. What an incredible ride to orbit.
And it looks like it's coming, the visuals are coming from the second stage.
I'm glad that you don't have a copy of our ICS. The cheers the whole way up were incredible. A big thank you to SpaceX for incredible instructors. Tyler, I'm talking to you and your team right now. Incredible instructors, engineers, and operators. They're the reason we are now safely in orbit. A thank you to NASA, Roscosmos, CSA, ESA, JAXA, who work together to make the International Space Station work for us all.
Cybertruck, don't get me started on this thing.
My friends and mentors who are the reason we're here today. Over to you, Mike.
Yeah, hey, it's just to let you know, it's kind of like a roller coaster ride with a bunch of really excited teenagers. Want to mention the NASA community is just a really warm but steely-eyed family that does amazing things, and it kind of hugs you, but it pushes you into the unknown while watching your back. It's really been an incredible for me to grow over these past 30-plus years, and now I'm really honored to fly this new generation spaceship with this new generation crew. Thanks to my own family for tolerating my otherworldly habits. Thanks to NASA for being the backbone of exploration that we are. And just thanks so much to our friends and colleagues at SpaceX for the awesome ride. It's great to be back in space again.
There's our veteran.
And I would like to second Mike and Matt's words. I'm super excited to be here. And, I need to hear, and the words that come to my mind is that I'm so grateful and I'm thankful for everyone who got us to this point. There's no way we would have been able to do this without all the people, from all the instructors, from all the people supporting on the ground, to the folks in the kitchen who kept us fed, and moves out at SpaceX. I'm so grateful for everyone, and I just want to give a big thanks to my family and friends who came from all over the world to see this. Thank you for supporting me through all the days of waiting to get to this point. Thank you for everything, and I want to give a quick shout out to my sisters who couldn't make it, Brenda and Patty, and then I also want to give a nod to Syracuse who supported me through everything, and I am in a New York state of mind right now. It is amazing. Thank you for everything.
Warm greetings to everyone from the orbit. I would like to express huge gratitude to Roscosmos, NASA, ESA, JAXA teams, and all who took part in preparation and implementation. A separate shout out to my family and friends. Thank you for your support. My sons, Сережа, Влад, Саша, be good. Кузбасс от Москвы. See you soon. Всех тепло приветствую с орбиты. Выражаю огромную благодарность коллективу Роскосмоса, НАСА и САДЗАКСа и всем без исключения причастным к подготовке и реализации нашего полета. Отдельный привет передаю своей семье и близким. Спасибо вам за поддержку. Сыновьям Сережа, Влад, Саша, будьте молодцами. Кузбасс, Москвы, до встречи.
There's a cosmonaut speaking, and like the others, they were thanking a lot of the space agencies involved, NASA, ESA, JAXA, Roscosmos, and many others.
And we see the vehicle chasing down the International Space Station on orbit. Nose cone opening is in progress. We saw nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts. With that, your go to raise visors. And I've got one final note. We have a tradition on board this spacecraft for its travelers to bring a small token, a zero-G indicator, if you will.
There we go.
To demonstrate the free-floating nature of objects traveling in orbit around the Earth. And I wonder if you've brought anything fitting that description.
Oh, let's see. Let's see. Ooh, ooh. Come on, come on.
Well, you should ask. Oh, man. So per tradition, we, of course, have a zero-G indicator. It's already been deployed. The significance of our zero-G indicator is not actually what it is, but who chose it. Many parents around the world have jobs that take them away from their children and families for long periods of time to serve their communities, their country, and the world. Military families are a prime example, but many jobs, including our own, share this rate. The choice of the zero-G indicator was given to my daughters to represent the sacrifice that children everywhere make while their parents are serving away from home. We chose a stuffed family dog, and she is free-floating here today.
I hope we can get some visuals of that. You have to excuse me, I'm getting a little emotional right now. Because as the child of a military person,
Matt, we copied all good words. I think we don't have video inside the capsule. We'll have to come back with you in a minute for a video.
and there goes the nose cone. I see. But the point that I'm trying to make is that not only is the person doing a lot of service, so are the spouses, the children, and anybody that they leave behind, because they're still taking care of the rest of the family while the service person is TDY, or in this case, the astronauts and cosmonauts are on orbit.
And again, the nose cone is opening to expose those two sets of hooks that Dragon will use to autonomously dock with the International Space Station.
It also bears noting that back in 2006, my father passed away, and about almost 17 years to the day, my mother did.
And we're standing by for those views.
That's the original one from Demo 1, which happened literally 5 years ago, a few days ago.
For those of you following along, you'll know that our first zero-G passenger was Little Earth on demonstration mission 1. Here's Little Earth on board Dragon on that DM-1 flight, and later on board the ISS. Today, just 5 years later, we've reached 50 people flown to space. From 0G to 50.
Thanks for the lurk, Hershey, over on VStream.
And of course, here in Hawthorne, I actually have the real Little Earth that went to space, safely back on Earth with us here in Hawthorne. Little Earth is a celebration of zero-gravity indicators, an essential component of space missions that help mark the transition into zero-G. From Yuri Gagarin's famous pencil to modern indicators like Little Earth and demonstration missions to Tremor the sequin dinosaur, zero-gravity indicators have become a way for all of us to connect with and celebrate human spaceflight. Human spaceflight has come so far in the last 5 years. SpaceX has launched 9 human spaceflight missions on behalf of NASA and 4 commercial astronaut missions. That's a total
And
of 50
Crew 1's
crew
launch
members
was
to space
my very
since
first
2020.
ever stream.
34 on behalf of NASA and their partners, and 16 commercial astronauts, including the first all-civilian mission to space and the first all-private passenger mission to the International
Inspiration
Space
4, that was the one I was saying. That had, instead of the
In
docking
addition to flying people,
mechanism,
SpaceX also enables researchers
and the hatch,
opportunity to fly critical science to orbit.
it had a big dome at
SpaceX
the
and
top
Dragon
where you saw
carried
earlier.
Over 1,000 research experiments to and from low Earth orbit and the International Space Station.
Ah, yes, I think we did.
300,000 pounds to and from the station since 2012. Researchers from
We
around
did, in
the
fact,
world use the space
do that
station
on
to
Crew
address
2.
complex human health problems on Earth, studying disease formation, testing drugs and diagnostic tools, and examining the inner
I believe that was
workings
the
of
first one that
human
actually
body.
had a
At
cosmonaut
any one
on the
time,
mission.
The station hosts hundreds of investigations spanning every major scientific discipline from physics to microbiology.
Every mission yields critical research and learnings that help make life both on Earth and in space better. From DNA sequencing to 3D printing, studies on the space station test a variety of technologies, systems, and materials that will benefit life on Earth
Dragon
and be
SpaceX,
needed for
we see a
future
nominal
long-duration
nose cone opening,
exploration missions.
PCS and forward bulkhead Draco checkouts, and we see an upcoming burn in 23 minutes, 2-3.
Axiom 3 was the first ever American crewed vehicle that had an entirely non-American crew aboard. And like Axioms 2 and 1, those were entirely privately funded and privately operated launches, with no operations from any of the any agencies. There's our dog.
Zero-G indicator. Loved hearing the crew's description of who chose this.
That is
this
so
animal
sweet.
And why, and everything that it means to them, to their mission. And
There
obviously
goes.
the community standing behind each of these 4 astronauts.
And in addition to that, we heard some great words from the crew expressing their thanks and excitement to be on orbit. Really great to see them successfully on their way to the International Space Station. We had a successful nose cone deploy as well as those Draco checkouts, everything continuing to go really smooth. So for now, we're going to end our coverage from here in Hawthorne until we pick back up with our docking coverage in about 26 hours.
So for now, we're going to hand it back over to Megan and Raja at Kennedy Space Center to wrap up today's launch coverage.
Let's see what they've got to say.
Welcome to Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where we just watched Crew-8 liftoff from Launch Pad 39A. 3 NASA astronauts and 1 cosmonaut now en route to the International Space Station. I'm Megan Cruz. This is NASA astronaut Raja Chari, and we got to see an incredible launch. What a clear night.
That was amazing.
Dragon SpaceX. Cabin environment looks good for suit doffing, and we'll take the camera external here in just a sec. Your go for 4.012 suit doff.
They're in the process of getting ready to take off their suits and go into basically a shirt sleeve environment.
Copy to go, 4.012 suit doffing.
And so you heard the calls there. So first they wait for the nose cone to get open. They wait for the Dracos to be safed, which was the launch escape system. And then once they've verified,
Or more accurately, the Super Dracos that go on each of the 4 corners of the vehicle.
And it's pretty sweaty. You've been laying on the back for a while. Yeah, but you could hear it in all their voices, the excitement. And like you said, what an amazing night down here at the Cape. It was super clear. You could see.
Dragon cameras are exterior.
You could actually see the staging, and it was
Copy external.
Amazing view.
Still hear the excitement in their voices.
Come back, so it was a super clear night, and we got to see the second stage turn into just a very faint star all the way at Seco.
Yeah, and it's great to see some friends launch of yours. You're really close with Matt and Mike, I understand. And really, it's nice to see a launch because we really waited till T-minus 10 minutes to know whether or not we were going to go.
Yep, yeah, and it's it's always exciting when it comes to space flight, even more exciting when it comes to human space flight, and just great to see the team come up with a technical solution, look at all the data. As you heard them keeping the crew informed, like we talked many times tonight, the core is the person and the Capcom that they are talking to, but there is literally hundreds of people talking on loops and making engineering decisions and trying to go back and look at analysis data. And so a great testament to the team tonight to pull all that data together, as they always do.
Yeah, and to make sure that they're safe at launch and also re-entry. So Great to see you at the launch again. And once they get to the space station, they're going to have a hand in some incredible science and investigations. And here's Jasmine Hopkins with more on that.
Thank you so much, Megan. That's right. We saw another beautiful, spectacular launch from here on the Space Coast. And joining us now is Dr. Ch from Emory University to talk about Project Eagle. So, Dr. Ch, what is Project Eagle?
Our goal is to investigate the impact of space microgravity on human heart microtissues. These tissues are generated from stem cells, and they are a potential source of cells for cardiac regeneration. One challenge is that these heart stem cells are largely immature, meaning that they're not as fully developed as the heart cells in our body. So we are trying to find ways to push these cells to develop further, because transplanting immature cell could actually increase the risk of complications. The good news is that we found this heart muscle cells become more mature under ground-based simulated microgravity. And we would like to confirm that observation under real space microgravity.
Right, so we're kind of taking what we've learned here on Earth and seeing if we can apply it in space. So with that in mind, we've been studying heart health in space for quite a long time now. So is Project Eagle going to tie into any of the other research we've already done?
Great question. Yes. Actually, our experiments build up on several interesting studies on the space station, including our own. For example, on the space station, heart stem cells or precursor cells grow faster than under standard gravity. So in our new experiment, we would like to learn if
All right, Puzzle, thank you for dropping by. Good friend of mine.
Can develop further and become more mature.
And I will do my best to have that good one, as it were.
Taking that research to the next step there. And of course, that's really important because we're looking at going even deeper into space. But actually, things like Project Eagle, could that actually help us on Earth? What we're learning in space for our heart, could that benefit our heart health on Earth as well?
That's good. Another good question. Yeah. So we hope to learn, identify the molecules or conditions that can be helpful to promote the maturation of heart cells, because that could help us develop new strategies to push the cells become more mature on Earth. More mature heart cells are more reliable for repairing damaged heart, and those more mature heart cells are also useful for develop new medications to treat patients with heart disease.
Right. Yeah. So it's great to see, we're taking it in space, also benefiting our life here on Earth. Thank you so much, Dr. Ch. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, Megan and Raja, back to you.
All right, we're about to wrap up our coverage here, but I want to take one last social media question because this one is super.
We're going to go ahead and head back to the chatting window, so. Anyway, I'd like to say thank you so much, especially for that moment, because they're absolutely right. These people are away from their family for a good bunch of time. In this particular case, it's about 6 months when they're on orbit on the ISS. And on top of that, when my father was in the Air Force, he would sometimes be away for not necessarily months at a time, but certainly at least weeks at a time, maybe a couple months at the absolute most. But when you get right down to it, yeah, exactly 6 months. Exactly 6 months, Morachi. But that can be. I've experienced that myself so many times in my life while my dad was in the Air Force. It was trying at times. So, and at times, my mom, who departed us literally a week before the 17th anniversary of my father's passing, once said that the spouses oftentimes are also serving in the military. Even though they're not directly serving in the military proper, they still are serving us. They are still serving. And it's something I never really gave much thought of until we were watching various news stories, like people going off like to Afghanistan, Iraq, and various other zones where where there was a lot of fighting. Basically a war zone. And we see all these people coming back from their deployments and sometimes surprising their kids, their spouses, their parents, loved ones, friends, you name it. It's I'm sorry. Oh, it's I'm still recovering from, like I said, my mother passed away last year. I've said this many times on stream, but this is the first time I've been this raw on stream about it. So, you'll have to forgive me. It's, but in any event, that's basically what that spoke to that particular part of me. Because, like I said, as a military child, and one of the things my dad did, originally what was going to happen, he retired after 23 years in the Air Force as a Master Sergeant. They were going to offer him a promotion to Senior Master Sergeant, but that would have taken him away from us for long times at a time, which he wasn't entirely crazy about. So he elected at that point to retire and started work at our local public television station, where all of us in our family, including him, have volunteered for some part of our lives. And then after that, then of course my father passed away almost 20 years into that part of his career. So, and he certainly, in my opinion, served with great distinction. But I speak this both as a military child as well as a grateful United States citizen for what he has done for this country under the United States Air Force. So that one really spoke to me. Yes, and what he did, I've mentioned this a couple times before. He flew aboard the Boeing WC-135 weather reconnaissance aircraft, which would gather gaseous and particulate samples, usually in support of making sure that people are in accordance with nuclear test ban treaties and nuclear non-proliferation treaties. And on top of that, they were used for other events that aren't necessarily related to nuclear weaponry. But in 1986, with the Chernobyl incident and the 2011 tsunami that caused meltdowns at the Fukushima power plants, to gauge the type and extent of damage caused by those meltdowns. And of course, since Chernobyl did not use a containment vessel like American reactor and other world reactors do, so much radiation was spewed all over the place. So, and that plane was in use just to see what kind of damage was out there, and that area is going to be contaminated for a very, very, very long time, or at least certainly within the reactor area itself. But the entire countryside, Pripyat, which is the city in Ukraine near the Chernobyl power plant, every time I see pictures of that, it's just absolutely ghostly. So, I'm really sorry for letting that get into my get me emotional like that. It is definitely something I wasn't expecting. But like they said, a lot of people, a lot of special stuff goes into selecting a zero-G indicator, and of course in this case it was one of their children, basically sending a part of their family, as it were, in effigy into space. So it was definitely symbolic, all right, and I know that entirely too well, being a military brat myself. And for those people, I stand in solidarity with them, because I know what it's like to have a family member on TDY for a considerable period of time, or a deployment if it's I don't know, I guess I'm not sure what TDY and deployments are, but I know my dad was stationed in Japan, where I was born, and then I came to the United States with my parents a couple of years after that. My dad probably spent like 4 years there, and of course I've been here in California ever since. But anyway, I'd like to first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming by on all of my streams. I really appreciate your being here, especially when I had to bear a part of my heart out, because, like I said, that particular part really spoke to part of me that was growing up as being the child of a military service person. It was tough at times, not having dad there. And like Mom said, and I mentioned before, is that oftentimes the rest of the family, in a way, serves in the military. Well, in a way, albeit as making sure that they're holding down the fort at home, making sure everybody's okay, and making up the gap for whoever the parent is that's not there, that's in the military, whether they be on deployment, TDY, or wherever. But anyway, it's this has been a very interesting experience. This was not something I was anticipating. It's gone from being just watching a space launch to watching my getting a very personal, seeing something very personal being talked about during the course of that particular launch. And it was definitely something I'm not used to. So, yeah. So in any event, like I said, thank you for joining me. I appreciate your being here. And really, sorry for your loss, by the way. Thank you for the kind words, Marachi. It was... I'll be honest with you, the last 4 years, up to maybe right around New Year's, have been pretty much almost a continuous crisis mode. That's something I'll have to say for another day, because that's ordinarily I would say don't trauma dump, but in this case, it's the streamer trauma dumping on their audience. So you get my meaning, I guess. But in any event, thank you so much for joining me and letting me pour my heart out for just a minute. And because I mean, I had to talk about this, because, like I said, the crew was absolutely right. Sometimes the family does a bit of service, as it were. In this case, in service of NASA, basically holding down the fort while their loved one is on orbit. Who knows? A lot of things that they were doing, like what they were saying on that stream where they were talking about cardiac tissue that is in an immature state and can only be tested in the presence of microgravity, sometimes incorrectly called 0G. There is still gravity. They're in a constant state of free fall as they orbit the planet. So, the stuff that they do on Earth, on orbit, has an effect on everything, on our quality of life here on Earth. Not just for the future of spaceflight, but the future of us on this planet, and potentially, as Elon Musk frequently says, that we should be a multi-planetary species. So a lot of this stuff is for the benefit, not just for the space flight, but for everybody, for all of humanity. So thank you for joining me, and let me see whom we can raid. I don't think I'm gonna do anything on VStream. Instead, I'm gonna choose someone to raid on Twitch. So let's see who we got. And yeah, sure thing, Marachi. I appreciate your coming by and watching this. I think we're gonna visit my good friend Luna Miura, who literally raided me 2 nights last night, I believe. Actually, it was maybe it was a couple of streams ago. But in any event, she's a good friend of mine, a very, very good friend of mine, and Puzzle Pulsar's. In fact, it was Puzzle Pulsar and another friend of his who introduced me to her, and she's an absolutely sweet, wonderful person, and she has been one of my good friends, and also on top of that, she allowed me to talk about what was going on in my darkest moments in the recent 4 years. And I really appreciate all the stuff that she's done. So let's go ahead and get that ready. I felt it was fitting to return the favor, if you will. Ooh, it looks like she's got a different. Actually, no, she's got one of her. I think she's got her second model on, and she's got a little bit of decorative stuff on there. So let's go ahead and get that started. And before we go too far, let's go ahead and get you some raid text. That's for folks who don't have a sub. And then there's some text for those who do have one. If you want to use my emotes, you can always sub, whether during stream or off stream. Either one will work. If you have the means, by all means do so. Unfortunately, I don't exactly have any rewards just yet, apart from the emotes. And on top of that, I could use some extra emote slots. Hint, hint. So, in any event, thank you so much for joining me, and let me go ahead and start the pre-raid procedure. And thank you so much for everyone for coming. And as I always say, Slava Ukraini. And until the next stream, I hope everybody has a great evening, great day, or whatever it is in the world. And thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time. Bye.